Good morning. On the behalf of the New Thought Center of Hawaii, I'd like to welcome you to today's virtual Sunday service. At New Thought, we take turns in facilitating. My name is Stephen Goss, and I'm today's facilitator for this program. Today, we're fortunate to have as a speaker Debbie Hecht, who I will introduce later in the program. And for our lovely musician, we have Simber Lily Quinn, who will be playing original harp music for us. And Simber, if you could play us a piece now, we'd love it.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for introducing me, and it's a delight to be back at the New Thought Center. I've played in person when I lived on the island, and I'm just thrilled to play for you now from Denver, Colorado. I love to play the Queen's music, and for our opening number, I'm going to play Sonoe, which is the Queen's second most famous song after Aloha Oi.
Thank you, Debbie. Simber. That was a very serene. Let's continue the mood with a opening prayer from the Course in Miracles. I'm responsible for what I see. I choose the feelings that I would experience. I decide upon the goal I would achieve, and everything that seems to happen to me, I have asked for and receive as I have asked. Now I'll take a deep breath, let it out, relax, and let's go into a moment of silence and ask ourselves, what do we believe is the most important thing to believe, and thus receive as we have asked. Thank you all for that quiet moment. Welcome back. I'd like to say a little bit about the New Thought Center of Hawaii. Our history is we have evolved from a Kona Community Church of Religious Science, which was founded way back in 1971. And we've had Sunday services continuously ever since then. And we've been in Kealakekua since 1999. It's always difficult to say exactly what is New Thought, because we all have a different take on it. For me, it's a place to practice improving my own perception of life. It's about learning that whatever that I put my faith in, the way I believe it is, that tends to happen, whether it's good or bad. It's a way of learning from all the different world traditions, what's real and what's not real. And most of all, I think we learn that to trust in the existence of a divine order. We're physically located in Kealakekua, Hawaii, in Palani Terrace, and we belong to the International New Thought Alliance. And now we're going to have a reading from The Science of Mind magazine by my partner, Shana Gregory, who's going to take my place momentarily here.
Let's start off with the wise words from Barbara Taylor Brown. People encounter God under shady oak trees, on riverbanks, at the tops of mountains, and in long stretches of barren wilderness. God shows up in whirlwinds, starry skies, burning bushes, and perfect strangers. Ernest Holmes says, since there is but one spirit, and this spirit is within you and in everything, then everywhere you go, you will meet the spirit. You meet the spirit in people, in places, and in things. My experience of sanctuary growing up was a tall building with a steeple, enormous stained glass windows, large looming statues, and lots of marble. There were so many rules in the sanctuary. One of them required being still and quiet. Only whispers were allowed, unless you were praying or singing in mass. When I was there, I recited memorized prayers and followed the instructions of the adults. There was no laughing allowed, of course, and that rule alone brought out the giggles at the most inopportune moments. I never felt good enough to be in the sanctuary. I was there to confess my sins and my unworthiness. Today, my experience of sanctuary is anywhere I feel a connection with the divine, in the forest, at the beach, out to dinner with friends. Sanctuary can be playing with a puppy, helping a neighbor, or going for a walk in the park. My home is my sacred sanctuary, a place where I feel love, peace, freedom, and harmony. Laughter and joy and fun are absolutely permitted in my sanctuary. I affirm everyone who comes into my home feels the presence of love. I am free to communicate with spirit through my tears, my anger, my gratitude. My prayers are free flowing, joy filled whispers, shouts, songs, and cheers. How freeing it is to have the world as my sanctuary. It is such a blessing to feel God's presence and love wherever I am. Where is your sanctuary? The affirmation for today: wherever I am, I feel connected to the divine. Wherever I am, I feel connected to the divine. Say it with me. Wherever I am, I feel connected to the divine.
Thank you, Shana. That was absolutely divine. Well, the program's gone pretty quickly up to this point, so it's time for me to introduce our guest speaker for today. But first, we'd like another musical piece from our lovely harpist.
Thank you, Stephen. As I mentioned earlier, I love playing Queen Liliuokalani's music on the harp. And so, and she also felt a very deep connection to the divine and wrote this beautiful song, Ke Aloha o Kahaku, the Queen's Prayer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zimber. That was great. Well, like I said, it's time to introduce our presenter for the day, and her title is Journey from My Head to My Heart. Debbie's I believe, a conscientious person who will be sharing her insights with us and how her personal time spent in journeying through periods of perfectionism, through working, through being competitive, and also being collaborative have all been lessons for her. She feels they have opened up her heart, her relationships, and has become better from it. She thinks that she's become happier in general. And also that most of us humans have a similar path to travel to their authentic selves. Debbie grew up near the ocean in New Jersey. Then she moved to Tucson, no ocean there. In Tucson, she graduated from the University of Arizona. She taught school for a while and then started a career in investments in commercial real estate. She's lived on the Big Island since 2002. She's worked at the Kohala Chamber of Commerce and also as a legislative aide for the Hawaii County Council. And she's worked long and hard in land conservation in both Tucson and on the Big Island. She's been the campaign coordinator for the 2% Land Fund program since 2005. She's written or helped to write legislation enabling land fund maintenance and public access, open space. And she's been the Open Space and Natural Resources Commissioner. She's been part of a grassroots effort that has helped preserve almost 10,000 acres of parklands and open space on the Big Island. Debbie was raised a Unitarian Universalist and is a member and vice president of the Unitarian Universalist of West Hawaii. She spends time with family and friends. Debbie sounds like our kind of a very kind person. So would you please welcome Debbie Hecht.
Thank you so much, Stephen. That was very well put and very sweetly put. Aloha, my name is Debbie Hecht, and I'll be speaking about the longest journey I've ever taken is the 16 inches from my head to my heart. I posted some questions for you to think about and discuss and possibly we can discuss after the service on the chat. I wanted to start with a reading before the sermon or the talk to set the tone. It's called Fear by Khalil Gibran. They say before entering the sea, a river trembles with fear. She looks back at the way that she has traveled from the peaks, the mountains, the long winding road, which crosses forests and villages, and sees in front of her such a vast ocean that entering it doesn't seem anything else than having to disappear forever. But there's no other way. The river can't go back. No one can ever go back. Going back is impossible in existence. The river needs to take the risk and enter the ocean. It's only when entering the ocean that fear will disappear, because it's only then that the river will know it's not about to disappear into the ocean, but to become the ocean. That stirred me, it really did. So it sets a nice tone for my talk. The longest journey is about my introspective journey to become a more fully functioning human being and to be able to feel a range of emotions and understand those reactions. The conflict, the heartfelt relationships, and lessons along the way have been life-changing. They have cracked open my heart and resulted in some comical irony. My path has broadened and narrowed at the same time. I have developed a razor edge and an achy, breaky heart. My relationships have deepened and I have become happier as a result. I discovered some large stumbling blocks along the way, erroneous assumptions and unstated expectations. I have tried to eliminate my fear-based assumptions. I tried to be honest and upfront about my wants and needs with those close to me. It's all about learning to celebrate your authentic self, warts and all. I agree with Brene Brown, who said, authenticity is a collection of choices that we have to make every single day. It's about the choice to show up and be real, the choice to be honest, the choice to let our true selves be seen. My first baby step toward becoming more of a feeling being instead of analyzing everything came the hormones of pregnancy in 1982. Being pregnant cracked open my heart. I remember getting all teary-eyed at the Hallmark commercials at Christmas. I remember laughing at myself and figuring that would all pass after giving birth, but it never did. Have you ever looked at your loved ones and just melted into loving them so much? Your heart feels full. I have said to my son so many times, you have no idea how much I love you. And he scoffs at me. He answers with an eye roll and says, oh, Mom, you have to say that. You're the mom. So I knew I was having a boy. I thought about all the things that people my age struggled with. And I found that most of the struggles were around making decisions. I was determined to provide bad experience in making decisions. As a young child, I would offer him two options that were acceptable to me, and then he chose one. That worked great because he learned to make decisions. And since it was his choice, there was buy-in and accountability. The other thing I saw was that men had the hardest time expressing their emotions and asking for what they need. For years, I thought men didn't have emotions because my father had always been so stoic and reserved until he exploded. I wondered if this was because his mother had died when he was 12. I wanted to make sure that Matt could identify his emotions and talk about them. As a young child, I would play games by making faces and having him guess what I was feeling. As he got older and could read, we would do charts with different emojis. Well, they call them emojis now. And he would say the corresponding feeling, a variation on the smiling phrase, but with frowns or eyes. The result is he can read faces pretty well, can express how he feels, and is very empathetic and compassionate. But if it's about balance, he may be too empathetic. Plus, he's a fixer like me. Neither of us likes to see people we love in pain, so we want to fix it. Sometimes this can be seen as disrespectful. Balance is a hard thing to achieve, a razor-thin edge between problem solving and telling people what to do. I flew to LA 5 days after the birth of my granddaughter in 2011. The door opened and there is my big 6'3", goofy, Gumby-bodied, sleep-deprived 27-year-old kid with this teeny tiny baby on his arm and the biggest hug ever. Mom, I get what you were saying. I get how much you love me. He was in tears, and of course I started to cry. My heart cracked open further. It was his heartfelt journey that pushed me farther along from my head to my heart. I remember looking into my granddaughter's eyes and seeing back to generations that came before and seeing forward to the generations to come. It was like looking at two mirrors facing each other where the images go on and on to infinity, the grand continuity of life. My heart cracked open with love for the potential of this new person. I wanted to change. I wanted the solid stuff of a good relationship. I knew my problem-solving, head-centered way was probably a defense mechanism to protect my heart. I had the words and language to describe how I was feeling, but that was vulnerable and really scary. I was very pragmatic about this. Wry grin, when you're trying to go from your head to your heart. My first steps in the longest journey were when I decided that every time I would start analyzing my thoughts or try to think my way out of a problem, I would ask myself, wait, stop, how do I feel about this? And let the answer bubble up. I learned to be comfortable with the discomfort of being vulnerable. This was very, very uncomfortable for a long time until I read about the Buddhist way of non-attachment and observing. Non-attachment is the ability to detach yourself from things that control or affect you in a way that does not serve your well-being. Then you can observe without judgment. I could observe myself and try to understand my feelings until I could recognize them better. An out-of-body experience. There were several ways I was tripping over my own feet. I was pretty good at recognizing my erroneous assumptions and asking for what I wanted and needed, but something was still severely out of whack. As a member of the oh so perfect Hecht family, I was knocking myself out to achieve perfectionism and worried about what people thought. Was being perfect the measuring stick for success? I remember thinking for the first 18 years of my life that I was a complete slob. Well, next to my brother, dad, and mother, I was. They had everything neatly folded and put away. My brother had his pens lined up like soldiers on his dresser. There was not a speck of dust or grime anywhere. And then there was me, always moving outside at the beach with the dog covered in sand, playing sports in and out of the pool, helping in the garden, more tomboy pigpen type than a neat little girl. Being a slob was a source of great shame and feelings of not good enough, a deficiency. Excuse me. I was so relieved to get to college and get out of the house. And much to my amazement, out of the 12 other girls in our dorm, 6 were messier than me and 6 were neater. Wow, maybe I was normal. My neatness and getting things perfect were not what made you a nice, good person. This epiphany had me question everything about my parents, their values, and their way of life. My parents were pretty racist, but I knew some wonderful Black people in high school. My father was sexist. He told me to take a secretarial course so that I could earn some money before I got married and had 3 kids. They were wrong about that too. What's perfect for me might not be perfect for you. Plus, the self-righteous indignation that accompanies the judgment of perfectionism was just plain hurtful and obnoxious. And I am better than you are statement. How do people benefit from that? We are all human and kindness should prevail. That was my overarching belief. Playing tennis taught me a lot. Your worst self can show up with no warning on the tennis court when it's crunch time in a competition. It's much better to smack the tennis ball than to smack people. It's a great frustration outlet until you use it against yourself. You can do some real damage. My dad waited until he was 35 to have his first child, and I turned out to be a girl. No matter, girls can play sports. My dad would move me around the tennis court, back and forth on the clay court until I skidded and skinned up my leg. He felt bad about this, but he was just testing my limits. As a young singles player, I made some bad shots. I got by a lot because I was a good athlete and could run everything down. But boy, did I beat myself up. My self-talk was brutal. Who do you think you are, stinking up the court like that? You call yourself a tennis player. Just go home. Then one day I stopped. I started back talk to my self-talk. Can you imagine my poor brain? It was like my own mental tennis match. You stink. Oh, stop. I'm doing the best I can. You call yourself a tennis player. Oh, give me a break. Shut up. So today's not one of my better days. How can I change this match? Then my positive, give myself a break self-talk won, and I started complimenting my shots and realizing that I was actually pretty good. I was happier, enjoyed the game more, and my body didn't get so tight. When I was playing in an important match with a doubles partner, I came to sense when we were both getting nervous and tight and started cracking jokes. I became a better player, was winning more and enjoying it much, much more. Perfectionism is another trap to unhappiness. When is good enough really good enough? It helps to give yourself and others a break. Thank heavens I was in my early 30s when I figured this out and haven't wasted decades on this. A big step for me towards authenticity. Am I truly being congruent with what I believe and how I act in my life? Do I do things to get positive feedback from others or because I believe in what I'm doing? Being a trained seal waiting for a fish of approval is living a lie. It's self-destructive and negates your whole being. Brene Brown's wonderful book, The Gifts of Imperfection, published in 2010, summed it up perfectly. This is a quote, understanding the difference between healthy striving and perfectionism is critical to laying down the shield and picking up your life. Research shows that perfectionism hampers success. In fact, it's often the path to depression, anxiety, addiction, and life paralysis, unquote. Another way to trip over your own feet is to be happy, positive. This is also perfectionism. I want people to think I'm spiritually evolved. This is just so impossibly false. To be fully human, you have to experience the full range of emotions. Being human is messy. Always being happy, positive can be a numbing exercise called spiritual bypassing. Spiritual bypassing, the use of spiritual beliefs to avoid dealing with painful feelings, unresolved wounds, and developmental needs, is so pervasive that it goes largely unnoticed. I tried to become non-judgmental for about a year. Came to the conclusion that was impossible, and I was beating myself up for being a failure. You know what I discovered? We need judgment to make order of our world, to decide if someone is friend or foe, or if it's safe where I am. It's more perfectionism. Robert Augustus Masters has written a wonderful book on this called Spiritual Bypassing. Another trap is the achievement trap. I almost fell into that one at the age of 35. I had been a real estate broker for about 6 years. I was getting my sea legs, feeling confident about my abilities, and starting to make, finally, some good money. I was never a great salesperson, but I have a great ability to anticipate questions or objections. I also like to do research, so I had all the questions answered. I was educated as a teacher, and all that training came into play to make up great listing packages and sell the properties. As an example, I found a great property for one of my clients, Camino de la Sierra Apartments in Tucson, Arizona. I believe it was 72 apartments. My commission was $48,000. Wow, was I impressed with myself? So was everyone else. I was a big cheese. The cat's meow. And I'm chuckling here because it just is so ridiculous. But I celebrated with a new watch and a wonderful party with friends. The next day I woke up depressed, which was shocking, but not because of a hangover, as you might imagine. I woke up and thought to myself, okay, now what? How are you going to top that? The light bulb went on in my dim head. So every deal was supposed to top the last one? What if it didn't? Was I a failure? What a trap that was. But let's expand on that. How many times have you said to yourself, oh, if my son gets into college, I'll be happy. I want more for him. If I just had more sex in my relationship, I'd be happy. I wish I had more money, then I'd be happy. Or envy is the other side of the same coin. The envy of someone who has money. Oh, look at him. How can he be in a bad mood? He's rich. All of these conditional agreements with the universe take away your power and to be happy in each moment. What a trap. Motivated by fear is not good enough. And what are you missing when you envy what others have? You are missing the present. The past is gone. The future has not arrived. And all we have is the gift of the present. Don't miss it. Be present. Another part of eliminating perfectionism is letting go of the shoulds. As my friend Marjorie says, you can just should all over yourself. How much of my time has been spent doing things for people because I thought I should, not because I wanted to? And is that the way I really want to spend my precious time? Was this making me resentful? Maybe a little. I started a self-talk test. Every time I thought I should do something, I would stop and ask myself, why? If I could answer that question, then I moved forward, but otherwise I dropped it. This led to less busyness and less resentment. Perfectionism is rooted in fear of not being good enough, that you are not smart enough, daring enough, that you will lose someone dear to you and not be able to handle the grief. People numb out with fear. They get busy instead of confronting their problems. I would say, oh, I can handle it. And then one time my cousin asked me, but why? Why would you want to? What a great question. What if you got still and let your heart handle it with compassion for yourself and others to sit with the problem until a solution comes up? Maybe you don't have all the information or the answers right now. That's okay. Uncomfortable, but okay. The courageous, brave thing to do is confront these fears head on, not back down. The only way through the problem is to go through it and hopefully learn from the process. It's okay to say, I don't know. I was a single working mom and my schedule was cobbled around my son's schedule until he went off to college in 2001. 9/11 happened 3 weeks after Matt left. Then Dad died. Then Florence died, who was like a mom to me, and our favorite dog died. I was seriously adrift and very lonely. My heart cracked open at the loss of the people I loved. My head couldn't make sense of it. The journey from my head to my heart pushed on, dragging me along too, in all my confused sadness. Things were getting stale for me in Tucson and I needed a change. I was having a difficult time creating a solid relationship. Something was missing though. All my self-analysis wasn't getting me to happy or even to content. The next step in the longest journey was a move. Nothing like a change of place to shake things up. I decided to move to Hawaii, just pick up and try it. I moved from Tucson, Arizona to Hawaii all by myself without really knowing anyone. It happened gradually in 2002. I put all my stuff in storage and rented my house. Why Hawaii? In 1963, my family had spent 2 months in Kailua on Oahu visiting my mother's best friend's family and my godmother. I loved it. I fell in love with the place. I spent my allowance on books on Hawaii, the history, the plants, the trees, the culture. I soaked it up like a sponge. The house we rented had plumeria trees. I remember smelling the fragrance of the flowers and thinking that's what heaven must smell like. My love affair with Hawaii continued in my 20s, and when we went yearly to Kauai. One summer, several of us rented a house on Kauai close to Spouting Horn, west of Poipu. This was adjacent to the Allerton Estate, which was now become the nationally renowned Allerton Botanical Garden. I would sneak in there every afternoon around 4 and try to avoid the gardeners. I took the path along the cliffs overlooking the ocean. It was an extraordinary, magical place full of private outdoor rooms, all created with trees, bushes, and flowering, fragrant plants. I was enchanted. Things fell into place for me very quickly on the Big Island. It seemed to be meant to be. A friend of my cousin had a coffee farm with a little apartment I could rent. I met another new friend at yoga class who turned out to be a friend of a tennis friend in Tucson. I had been a real estate broker for years in Tucson, but wanted to try something different. The neighbor who lived next door offered me a job facilitating the communities at the Kona Kohala Chamber of Commerce. I met community leaders and a lot of people really quickly. I could go in the ocean all the time and had great fun playing tennis. I was far from Tucson, where I had lived for 35 years and had deep, long friendships. I hadn't had to work hard to make friends in a long, long time. It was a muscle I had not used. I realized I needed to start reaching out to people. I needed to be very open and welcome, vulnerable to strangers. This was so very hard. Finding common ground, things you like to do together, asking people to meet you, not taking it personally if they said no. More fear came up around this. I was used to being respected for my accomplishments in Tucson in land conservation and in leadership in the environmental community. I had to re-earn this respect in Hawaii. After much analysis, I realized I was again about not being good enough. This leads to the need to be heard, recognized, and get attention. Intellectually, I realized that I was not perfect, but why did that matter? Was I completely unlovable? Maybe I was out of whack. My heart cracked open a bit further as I continued on the journey from my head to my heart. I devoured self-help books. One of my favorite gurus was Gary Zukov, who said, until you can turn to face your own fears, you will be a prisoner of them. Intimacy is trusting that the universe will provide what you need, when you need it, and in the manner most appropriate for you to hear it. That was a quote. I even came up with data. Talk about being in your head. Over the years, I have been fascinated by the Myers-Briggs assessments. I was pretty consistently an ENTJ, which means extroverted, sensing, thinking, and judging. I wondered why I frequently felt like a duck out of water, and I realized that less than 1% of women in the world were ENTJs. Over the years, I had a fascination with this assessment and oddly circled back to retake it about every 5 years. I didn't mean to do that. It just worked out that way. Fast forward 5 years, and the Myers-Briggs is starting to become more and more weighted towards becoming an INFJ, which would be introverted, sensing, feeling, and judging. The extroverted, introverted part was evenly split, and I am an ambivert, new word, half extrovert, half introvert. And the thinking, feeling part was also almost evenly split. So I was actually proving to myself that I was being successful going from my head to my heart. How ironic that I would choose to analyze my progress with a measuring tool, head-centered for sure. Also ironic, when stepping back to observe what was happening to me, I discovered that I started using different language when talking to close friends and family. Words like heartfelt, heartbroken, accompanied phrases like it hurts my heart and from the bottom of my heart. I started collecting hearts, made of coral, made of rock. Even the language cracked open my heart along the journey. Whoever is in charge has a sense of humor in the lessons we need to learn. I became more vulnerable and more empathetic, which tends to break your heart sometimes. Lucky for me, I ended up in California where I could get help with my literally achy, breaky heart. My heart really was broken. I needed 3 ablations to solve the electrical problems and 4 stents to solve the blockages. I needed a pacemaker to keep the rhythm of my heart. Amazingly, the blockages of the arteries hadn't shown up on the stress tests or echocardiograms. Was this me hiding my emotions? I've always believed that everything happens for a reason, and it certainly seemed that my fleet of guardian angels were out in full force, giving me heartfelt care. Through all these contractions and expansions, I have grown. It's a bit like your beating heart muscle. Nerves hit the heart and with an electrical impulse, and then it contracts. And when there is no impulse, the heart relaxes and fills. I found it was time to bring things back into balance, to balance my head with my heart, to know when the heart should lead and the head should follow, to live a conscious life, to be present. The realization was that the balancing never gets fully achieved. It goes on in the great seesaw of life. Maybe your time on earth is finished when you finally get it right. As Maya Angelou said, quote, I learned that whenever I decide something with an open heart, I usually make the right decision. I learned that every day you reach out and touch someone. People love a warm hug or just a friendly pat on the back. I've learned that I still have a lot to learn. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. I challenge you to take this long journey, the 16 inches from my head to your heart, and see what you learn along the way. It's the work of a lifetime. It's a great challenge. I have two readings, just quick readings in closing words. Here are my closing readings. I have great gratitude for you inviting me today into your world and allow me to speak my truth. So mahalo for that. These are words by Ram Dass. To live consciously, you must have the courage to go inside yourself, to find out who you really are, to understand that behind of all the masks of individual differences, you are a being of beauty, of love, and of awareness. When Christ said, the kingdom of heaven is within, he wasn't just putting you on. When Buddha said, each person is a Buddha, he was saying the same thing. Until you can allow your own beauty, your own dignity, your own being, you cannot free another. So if I were giving people one instruction, I would say, work on yourself. Have compassion for yourself. Allow yourself to be beautiful and the rest will follow. And you all, we heard from a reading from Marianne Williamson, and I really, really love this. And I think this is the fullest challenge. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You're a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make the manifest the glory of God that is within us. It is not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. So a very deep mahalo, and there are some questions in the chat. And if you want to get in touch with me, there's contact information and my website. And I think you can just get it in the chat. I think that'll be fine. So mahalo.
Thank you, Debbie. That was great. A lot of what you said really applied to me personally, of course, especially that part about being good enough. It always seems to be up, like, oh, can I accept myself the way I am? Then maybe I can accept others also. We're going to take a moment out for donations now for New Thought. We really appreciate any donations you can make, especially at this time of COVID, since we are not meeting in person anymore. I believe Pasha will post how to donate to New Thought, and Zimber Lily is going to play us some lovely music to donate by. And now we're ready for some upcoming announcements for events at New Thought. We'll once again do a screen share. Coming up at New Thought Center of Hawaii. We'll still be online only for the month of February. You can check the website for the YouTube link. The pre-recorded video will premiere Sundays at 10 and remain available afterwards. Last Sunday of the month we will gather by Zoom. Next 3 Sundays, Susan Bambera, her title is What's Love Got to Do with It? That should be good. Music by Mahina Sanders. On the 20th, Linda Boozer, her topic is empathy, compassion, and a heart of joy. And music will be by Laura Prince. Then on the 27th, we have our annual membership meeting. This will be by interactive Zoom and music by Lori Callis. Of course, our in-person monthly events have been canceled for the rest of the month, but we still have service opportunities available. We need volunteers for our 50th Jubilee Planning Group. It's still not too late because we're going to extend the celebration and farther into the year until we can maybe meet in person. We need a person to help us maintain our Facebook page for the New Thought Center. We need a volunteer who would be interested in donating some of their time to be on the board of trustees, which will start in March. And if you are a member of New Thought Center, you can download a copy of the application form from the website www.newthoughtcenterofhawaii.com. And any new members will be recognized at the annual meeting. Now I'd like to ask first, Simber, if she would like to make any announcements about her music.
Sure, I'd like to make a couple of announcements. You can download free music from my website, www.simber.com. And I have a podcast called Relaxing Heart Music that's available on Amazon Podcasts and anywhere you listen to podcasts. I'm on iHeartRadio and just about everywhere. So look for Relaxing Heart Music. And also I play live on Clubhouse. If you don't know what Clubhouse is, you can send me a note through my website. And that's on Wednesday evenings at it is 11 p.m. Eastern time, so I think 5 p.m. Hawaii time. And I'd be delighted to meet you there.
Thank you. And Debbie Hecht, do you have any further words of wisdom or requests you would like to share with us? Or announcements? Calling Debbie. Okay.
My website and my contact information is in the chat, but here's also some information if you want to write it down. And thank you so much for having me. I thoroughly enjoyed it. So,
Well, we enjoyed having you. I'm sure we all got some inspiration out of that.
well, good.
Now it's time for our closing song. Kimber's written a original piece called Cricket, that she said she wrote for a beautiful child. And we get to listen to it now as our closing music for today's service.
Thank you, Stephen. I know you normally close your services with Hawaii Aloha, and when I'm there in person, I play with you, but with Zoom, there's a lag. And so this time I thought I'd offer something a little different. This was written for my neighbor when I lived in Curtistown, a little 6-year-old girl next door named Cricket.
Thanks again, Ember.
for
It was a
having me.
pleasure having you. And that's the end of the service. Goodbye. Thank you all for joining us and being connected with New Thought for the day.